The stars above the Orion Arm were calm, shining softly in the dark space. But inside the alien ship Leuven, there was no calm. Tension filled the air as Commander Grolton stood in front of the large viewing screen. He was a tall creature, covered in green armor, with 4 eyes that flickered with worry. Around him, officers from other alien species whispered quietly, staring at the same screen. On it, images of human warships flashed, ships larger than most alien cities, built for one purpose only: battle. Humans had always been strange to the Galactic Coalition. They were new to the stars, but they had grown fast, too fast in just 100 years. They had gone from weak explorers to strong warriors, and now they were moving ships toward the border of the Grelak Empire. No one knew why, but every race watching had the same question: what made the humans angry this time? The Leuven was an observation vessel sent to watch and report. It had no weapons, no shields strong enough for war. It floated far from the action, but close enough to see the human fleet grow. Commander Grolton rubbed his chin with one long finger, staring at a list of ships. The Eagle's Reach, Terran Dreadnought class, the Valkyrie officer whispered. 2 kilometers long, armored with neutron-forged hull, 3 rail cannons, plasma turrets on all sides. Added the Srenti tech officer. Another name appeared: Riptide, a stealth destroyer known for disabling whole fleets without being seen. Then came the Nightfall, a carrier-class ship carrying hundreds of fighter drones and assault crafts. Each ship had a name, a history, and a reputation that made even the bravest alien soldiers nervous. "This is not a patrol," Grolton said quietly. "This is preparation." A small beep echoed across the control room. The signal came from human space. Another communication burst. They didn't hide it, but they didn't explain either. The message was short: Fleet Delta 3 repositioning for strategic readiness. End of transmission. "They're warning someone," muttered the insect-like commander from Kreska. "But not us. They don't need to warn us." Grolton replied, "This isn't a message for the Coalition. This is for the Grelak." Every species in the Coalition had a different culture, different weapons, different ways of fighting. But humans were different in every way. They learned fast, they adapted quickly, and when they chose to act, they struck hard and without delay. Many believed they were still weak, still soft inside. But that belief had cost the Velari Dominion their entire battle fleet 20 years ago. And no one had forgotten that. A hologram floated in the middle of the command room, showing Earth and its surrounding colonies. Red dots blinked on the edges: military outposts, defense grids, orbital shipyards. They were not just defending their home, they were building a wall around it. A wall made of steel and fire. Back on the viewing screen, a closer image appeared. A Terran shipyard, located near Titan's orbit, showed hundreds of workers moving around a massive warship under construction. Even from a distance, it was clear the humans were serious. This was not a show of power, it was a call to arms. Commander Grolton felt something deep in his chest, a feeling his people called Revora. It meant both respect and fear. He looked around at his officers, then turned back to the stars. "I want full reports on their ship movements, weapon systems, and logistics," he said. "And keep an eye on civilian chatter. Humans sometimes speak truth in places they think no one is listening." The room moved quickly after that, officers typing commands, screens filling with data. But even with all the technology and all the minds working together, there was one truth no one wanted to say. If the humans were truly going to war, nothing could stop them. The only hope was to understand who they were fighting and why. Somewhere out in space, the Terran fleet continued to grow, engines warmed, weapons loaded, and commands passed from one deck to another. In silence, the stars watched them, and so did the aliens, not with pride or excitement, but with quiet, growing fear, because deep inside, they all knew one thing: when humans prepare for battle, they don't bluff, they don't roar or threaten, they move, and when they move, someone always falls. And so the galaxy held its breath as humans went to war once again. Years before the human warships gathered near the Grelak border, a small mining rig floated near Neptune. It was an old station made of rusted panels and slow engines, used to collect frozen gas and rocks. Inside it were about 40 workers, engineers, technicians, and a few supply pilots. They lived simple lives, far from Earth, away from politics. They never expected trouble, especially not from the stars. One quiet morning, the station's radar picked up a strange signal. It came from deep space, fast, strong, and unknown. The workers thought it might be a meteor or an old probe drifting too close. But when the shape became clear, they realized it was something else. A ship, large and black, with a strange glow around its hull, came into view. It had the symbol of the Grelak Empire, a warlike alien race known to a few diplomats on Earth. The humans sent a message welcoming the visitor and asking for identification, but the alien ship didn't respond. Instead, it charged a weapon pod and, without warning, fired a plasma bolt into the station's hull. The explosion tore through 2 decks, killing 12 workers in seconds. Oxygen leaked into space, alarms screamed, and fire spread through the lower sector. The remaining crew struggled to seal the breach and send a distress signal. Before they could finish, the alien ship fired again. Another bolt hit the station's power core, causing a second larger explosion. The station broke apart, metal and bodies scattered across the black void. Only one shuttle managed to escape, carrying 5 survivors. They were picked up 2 days later by a cargo ship returning from the moons of Saturn. When the news reached Earth, the people were shocked. For the first time in decades, civilians had been killed by a hostile alien force. There was outrage across every colony. People cried for justice, but the government moved carefully. Ambassadors were sent to the Grelak, asking for answers, but the Grelak high speaker refused to speak. Their military claimed they had no knowledge of the attack. They said the ship had acted on its own, and the pilot was dead. No one believed it. But there was no proof, so Earth waited. And while they waited, they watched. The military began studying Grelak tactics, ship designs, and defense patterns. They hacked communication lines, tracked patrol routes, and mapped supply chains. Every week, the Terran Unified Command grew more prepared. Publicly, they said nothing. Privately, they were getting ready for war. Captain Elena Brooks, then only a commander, had been in charge of the team sent to collect the wreckage. She had walked the frozen pieces of the mining rig, floating in space like a graveyard. She remembered the scorched helmets, the torn oxygen tanks, and the broken data cores. That day, she made a promise. She would never allow such a thing to happen again. Now, standing on the bridge of the Eagle's Reach, she remembered every detail. The way the stars had looked when she first saw death in space, and the faces of the workers who never came home. Lieutenant Adam Crane, her second in command, stood beside her. "We have all the intel we need," he said. "Weak points in their shields. Patrol timing, even fuel shipments." Elena nodded. "We strike only military targets." She said, "No cities, no civilians." That was the human way, precise, planned, and powerful. They didn't destroy for glory. They acted only when pushed too far. And the Grelak had pushed, then hid their hands like cowards. The Terran High Council had finally approved the mission. The fleet would launch in 72 hours, heading straight for the Grelak command world. The goal was simple: cripple their war power and send a message. Earth was not to be tested. On the other side of the galaxy, the Grelak leaders still believed they were safe. They thought the humans were soft, too afraid of conflict. They laughed at the warnings, but their laughter would soon fade. Back aboard the alien ship Laruvan, Commander Grolton watched the reports. He pieced together the history of the mining rig, the silence from the Grelak, and the slow buildup of the human fleet. He saw the pattern, and he knew what was coming. "This is not revenge," he told his officers. "This is justice." The stars were quiet again, but not for long. In the silence, engines warmed, weapons charged, and ships aligned. Across human space, fleets moved like shadows, fast, quiet, and ready. They would not shout. They would not warn. They would simply arrive, and when they did, the galaxy would remember that humans never forget, and they never forgive without reason. The command deck of the Eagle's Reach was silent. Outside its thick armored windows, stars passed slowly as the giant warship moved through deep space. Captain Elena Brooks stood at the center of the room, hands behind her back, eyes focused. On the holographic table in front of her, the image showed the Grellic star system, spinning gently in blue light, with red markers over each military base and warship. Around the table stood the key members of the Terran Fleet Command, Lieutenant. Adam Crane was first to speak, his voice calm but serious. "Our target is the Grellic command world, Zoratha, located here," he said, pointing to the largest red mark on the map. "They have 12 orbital stations, 5 active fleets, and a strong planetary shield." Commander Lila Grant, head of the drone division, crossed her arms. "What about civilians?" she asked. "Do we have confirmation on their location?" Adam nodded. "Yes, we've isolated civilian zones. We'll avoid them completely." Captain Brooks turned to the group, her voice strong but quiet. "Our mission is not to conquer," she said. "We are here to destroy their ability to make war. Once that is done, we offer surrender terms." No one spoke for a moment. They all knew what was at stake. This wasn't just another mission. This was a moment that would be remembered across the galaxy. Back in the command center of the Laruvan, alien officers watched the same human fleet from afar. They didn't understand every word or every signal, but they saw the discipline, the speed, the focus. Commander Grolton stood with his arms crossed, feeling a strange chill move through his body. "These are not angry beings," he said. "They are patient, they are cold, and they are prepared." On the Eagle's Reach, final orders were given. The full Terran fleet would launch together in a tight formation. At the front, the stealth. Destroyer Riptide would disable enemy satellites and long-range scanners behind it. The heavy cruiser Bastion would carry shield boosters and repair units for mid-battle support. Flanking both sides were 6 fast-attack frigates, each named after great storms in Earth's past: Typhoon, Cyclone, Hailfire, Tempest, Monsoon, and Blizzard. Each was equipped with precision missile pods and short-range plasma lances. In the center of the formation stood the pride of the Terran Navy, the Eagle's Reach. It carried rail cannons the size of skyscrapers, deep-range torpedo bays, and a full carrier deck with drone fighters. Its power core could run an entire city for years. Now, it would power Earth's response to Grellic aggression. As the fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace, the crew worked with silent focus. Engineers checked systems, pilots ran diagnostics, and command staff reviewed protocols again and again. There was no cheering, no music, no excitement. Only duty, only purpose. In a briefing room deep inside the ship, a group of young officers sat with Commander Lila Grant. One of them, Ensign Joel Martinez, raised his hand. "Commander," he asked, "do you think they'll surrender once we destroy their defenses?" Layla looked at him for a long moment, then spoke. "I don't know, Joel," she said. "But I know this: if we don't act now, they'll do it again." The faces of the dead miners near Neptune still haunted many of them. Some had friends among the workers, some had family, and all of them remembered the silence from the Grellic leaders after the attack. It had not been a mistake. It had been a message. Now humanity would answer with one of their own. Meanwhile, in the halls of the Grellic War Council, the High Speaker paced slowly. His advisors warned him of human fleet movements, but he waved them off. "They won't attack," he said. "They're too afraid of looking like monsters." He didn't know humans didn't care about appearances. They cared about justice, and when they moved, they didn't send warnings. The Terran fleet reached the edge of the Grellic system and came to a halt. Final checks were completed, targeting systems aligned, and drone scouts released. Captain Brooks stood at the window of her private cabin. Watching the stars ahead, she thought of Earth, of the peaceful blue skies, and of the voices of her people calling for protection. She didn't like war, but she understood it. It was a tool, like any other, to be used carefully, and now it was time to use it. She pressed the command panel beside her, opening a fleet-wide channel. "This is Captain Elena Brooks," she said, her voice steady. "We move at dawn cycle, check systems, review orders, and stand ready. Today, we do not fight for revenge," she continued. "We fight to stop the next attack before it begins. Humanity does not forget, and we do not run." Across the ships her voice echoed, and every soldier, pilot, and officer nodded silently. The fleet turned toward Zoratha, the Grella command world. Engines burned softly, then flared bright. And in perfect formation, the Terran fleet jumped into hyperspace. Far behind them, in the shadows of space, the aliens on the Laruvan watched and recorded. They didn't speak, they didn't breathe, because deep down, they understood. A storm was coming, and its name was humanity. The blackness of space rippled and twisted near the Grelak system. A sudden burst of light appeared, and then the human fleet emerged from hyperspace. Ship after ship came into view, each moving with quiet power. They were not loud, not flashy. They arrived like a blade sliding through the dark. Sharp and silent, at the front was the stealth destroyer Riptide, nearly invisible to radar. Its hull shimmered with shifting colors, bending light around it. It flew ahead of the fleet, scanning for defenses and jamming signals. Within minutes, it found the first target, a Grelak satellite relay floating above the outer moon. With one pulse from its energy disruptor, the relay shut down. Grelak command was now blind. Behind it, the full Terran fleet moved into formation. The massive warship Eagle's Reach stood at the center, flanked by the Bastion and the strike frigates. Fighter drones were released from the carrier Nightfall. Spreading across space like a swarm of mechanical birds, they took position in a defensive screen, scanning for threats and protecting the fleet's outer edge. Back on the Eagle's Reach, Captain Elena Brooks stood on the command deck. The light of the Grelak star cast soft shadows across the floor. "All ships are in position," said Lieutenant Crane. Reading the tactical display, no response from the Grelak yet, they're still in the dark. Elena gave a single nod. "Begin Phase 1, she said. The first wave of human missiles launched without sound. They flew across the void at extreme speed, cloaked in radar-blocking tech. Before the Grelak could detect them, the missiles struck the outer defense stations. Explosions lit up space, silent but bright. Fireballs expanded, followed by debris floating slowly in the vacuum inside the Grelak capital station. Alarms finally began to sound. Commanders shouted, screens blinked, and soldiers ran to positions. But it was too late. The humans were already in control of space on the Laruvan. The alien observers watched the invasion unfold. The holographic map in front of them showed human ship movements and Grelak losses. Commander Groltan stood frozen, staring at the growing red zones on the map. "They knew exactly where to strike," he whispered. "They didn't guess they knew." The second wave began. Strike frigates Typhoon and Monsoon flew in fast, targeting the outer orbital defense rings, using advanced targeting software. They fired plasma bursts into key energy points. The rings exploded in perfect sequence. 3, 2, 1. Each blast cleared another path for the main fleet. Grelak fighters finally launched from the central shipyard. Dozens of sleek alien ships rushed toward the human fleet, glowing with energy weapons. But the Terran drones were ready, controlled by AI and monitored by human pilots. The drones intercepted the fighters. They flew in complex patterns, dodging fire, surrounding enemies, and striking with precise laser fire. A dogfight began above Zoratha's orbit. The Grelak ships were aggressive, fast, and agile, but the drones were smarter, faster to react, and impossible to outnumber. Within minutes, the first wave of enemy fighters was destroyed. The rest turned back, fleeing to regroup on the ground. The people of Zoratha looked up and saw bright flashes in the sky. Some were afraid, some were confused. Many had believed the humans were too weak to fight back. Now they were watching their military fall apart in silence. back on the Eagle's Reach. Captain Brooks studied the reports. She showed no pride, no joy, only focus. "We moved to Phase 2, she said. "The main batteries target the Grellock." "Fleet Command." The Eagle's Reach powered up its rail cannons. Massive magnetic coils glowed with blue energy as projectiles locked into position. With a low vibration, the cannons fired, sending metal slugs moving faster than sound. Each slug tore through space and hit its target, an enemy flagship trying to retreat. The ship exploded in a wave of light. Broken in two, 3 more shots followed, taking out command ships and refueling stations. Within minutes, the Grellock fleet was in disarray. Their admiral sent confused signals, trying to regroup. But communication lines were jammed, and backup systems were gone on the Leuven. A young alien officer spoke in shock. "The humans are not just winning," he said. "They're controlling everything." Commander Grolton nodded slowly. "Yes," he said. "This isn't a war. This is an operation." As the fighting slowed, Captain Brooks opened a secure channel to Earth. "Outer defenses are down," she reported. "Enemy fleet command is neutralized. Ground assault. Teams may begin at designated zones." Across the Terran fleet, troop transports prepared to launch. Inside them, soldiers checked gear, reviewed maps, and locked in their exosuits. They weren't going in to conquer. They were going in to finish what had begun years ago. The skies of Zaratha glowed with the light of fire and engines, and the ground below waited, because now the humans were coming down. The sky over Zaratha burned red. Flames flickered through the clouds, and the sound of distant explosions echoed through the air. But to the people on the ground, it was not just noise, it was fear. The mighty Grellock Empire, proud and undefeated for centuries, was under attack. And the attackers were not some unknown alien threat. They were humans. From the upper atmosphere, the Terran fleet held position. The massive warship Eagle's Reach floated like a giant shadow over the planet. Its hull shone with light from fires below, and its rail cannons pointed downward. But they did not fire again. The order had already been given. No civilian zones were to be touched. Only military targets. Captain Elena Brooks stood in her command chair, eyes locked on the tactical screen. The battle in space was almost over. The Grellock fleet had been broken, their defense stations destroyed or drifting. Now the ground phase had begun. The troop carrier Resolute began its descent, followed by smaller dropships. It wasn't the biggest ship in the fleet, but it carried one of Earth's best ground divisions. The 41st Orbital Response Team soldiers trained in gravity shifts, atmospheric changes, and zero visibility combat. They were calm, focused, and equipped with the best gear the Terran Alliance had ever made. Inside the drop bay, Sergeant Nate Willis stood with his squad. They wore exosuits-powered armor that gave them strength, speed, and full body protection. Each soldier checked their weapons and sealed their helmets. The ship shook slightly as it entered the atmosphere. But no one flinched. They had trained for this moment for years. Now they would finish what others had started. As the first drop pods launched, streaks of light raced across the sky. The Grellock anti-air systems tried to fire back, but most of their launchers had already been destroyed. The few missiles they did manage to send were intercepted mid-air by human defense drones. It was one-sided. For every shot the Grellock fired, the humans responded with 10 more. Sergeant Willis's pod hit the ground with a heavy thud. The hatch exploded outward, and his squad rushed out, taking formation behind rocks and debris. Their target was a Grellock command base just outside the capital. It had controlled drone strikes and fleet movements, but now it was silent. They had to be sure it stayed that way. Willis gave hand signals, and his team moved forward, covering each other step by step. Laser fire crackled from the left, and 2 Grellock soldiers opened fire. Private Lang took a hit to the shoulder but kept moving, his suit absorbing most of the damage. Corporal Diaz returned fire, disabling both enemies with 2 sharp bursts. Inside the command base, Grelak officers scrambled to hold their positions. They were trained, brave, and loyal to their empire, but they had never fought enemies like this. The humans didn't charge blindly or scream battle cries. They moved like shadows, spoke in short-coded signals, and never wasted a shot. Within 20 minutes, the base was cleared. Grelak weapons were powered down, terminals secured, and prisoners taken. Sergeant Willis reported to orbit. Base secured, light resistance, casualties minimal. Back in orbit, the Terran fleet continued its careful operation. No bombs were dropped at random. No cities were destroyed. Instead, they moved from one target to another, disabling war factories, military bunkers, and command outposts. Precision strikes, one after another. With chilling efficiency on the Laruvan, the alien observers watched in stunned silence. Commander Grolton stood at the main screen, arms folded. One of his officers turned to him, her voice uncertain. "This isn't like any war we've seen," she said. "They're not just destroying." Grolton replied, "They're reshaping the battlefield." He watched a human squad help a wounded Grelak civilian from a collapsed building. The soldier gave the alien child a water pack, then lifted debris off a trapped worker. It was a strange sight. They were warriors, but not monsters, and that made them even more dangerous. The Grelak High Command tried to send out reinforcements from deeper inside the system, but human scouts intercepted their fleet before it arrived. The strike frigate Cyclone took out their supply vessel, cutting their fuel line. The destroyer Riptide jammed their communication array, and the drone swarms made sure nothing slipped through. Every plan the Grelak made was already predicted, already countered. It was like trying to fight a ghost. By the end of the day, over 80% of their military power was gone. Captain Brooks opened a channel to the Grelak capital. "This is the Terran Unified Fleet," she said. "Your military capacity is no longer a threat. We offer you terms of surrender. Your civilians will not be harmed. Refuse, and we will continue until nothing remains." The message was short, direct, and final. There was no pride in her voice, no arrogance, just truth and a promise. On the planet below, fires burned, and smoke drifted into the sky, but the people were still alive, because the humans hadn't come to wipe them out. They had come to make sure no one else would die from Grelak greed again. The ground below Zaratha was scarred and battered. Burn marks covered trees and fields, and the air smelled sharp with smoke and dust. But the real battle was just beginning. From the skies above, drop pods hurtled toward the planet's surface, carrying the elite human troops. Sergeant Nate Willis led his squad as they landed near the edge of the Grelak command city. The drop pods smashed into the ground with a loud thud, sending dust into the air. The squad spilled out quickly, weapons raised, eyes scanning for threats. Every step they took was careful, trained, precise. The exosuits they wore made them faster and stronger than any soldier the Grelak had faced. The suits had thick armor plating, energy shields, and advanced targeting systems. Even with the weight of their gear, the humans moved silently, as if they were part of the shadows themselves. Nate glanced at his squad. Maria, Jake, Lila, and David, all experienced fighters. They had trained for months for this mission, and none of them showed fear, only focus. Their target was the main command hub, deep inside the city. If they destroyed it, the Grelak war effort would collapse. As they moved through ruined streets, alarms began to sound. The Grelak defenders were fast to react. Heavy energy bolts streaked toward the humans, lighting up the dark corners of the city. Jake took cover behind a broken wall and returned fire. His plasma rifle sang as it hit a nearby turret, disabling it instantly. The squad moved forward, clearing out pockets of resistance. Their helmets fed data directly to their commanders. Enemy positions, weak points, and escape routes. Everything was tracked and shared. The soldiers were connected like never before, each move planned and supported. In a ruined plaza, they found a group of Grelak soldiers trying to regroup. Maria took the lead, throwing a stun grenade that exploded with bright light and loud noise. The Grellic dropped their weapons, stunned and confused. David quickly moved in, tying their hands and securing them. The humans did not take prisoners lightly. But they never wasted time with hatred. They treated captives with a strict code of conduct. No torture, no cruelty. Their goal was clear. Stop the war machines. Not start new fights. Deep inside the city, Sergeant Willis's squad reached the command hub. They could hear the low hum of powerful machines and the quick steps of soldiers moving inside. Lila hacked the security system. Opening the doors, inside, they found rows of consoles and glowing screens, maps of troop movements, supply chains, and battle plans were displayed in bright colors. Nate grabbed a datapad and copied everything. This information would help the Terran fleet strike again and end the war quickly. As they worked, enemy reinforcements began to arrive. The squad prepared for a final stand. Energy shields hummed and weapons charged. Outside, the sounds of heavy footsteps grew louder. The Grellic sent in mechanized walkers, huge machines with thick armor and powerful guns. The squad fired everything they had. Plasma bolts hit the walkers, but the machines kept advancing. Jake focused on the control units, aiming for weak spots. Suddenly, explosions shook the building. Lila shouted a warning, "Incoming missiles." The squad dove for cover as the roof exploded, but the humans did not panic. They stayed calm and fought back harder. After a fierce battle, the mechanized walkers were disabled, and the Grellic defenders retreated. The squad sent a final report to orbit. Command hub secured. Enemy resistance broken, Nate said, breathing heavily. Mission success. Back in orbit, Captain Brooks smiled faintly. She knew the fight was far from over, but every victory counted. The humans were not invaders, they were liberators. And they would not stop until the Grellic could no longer threaten peace. After days of fighting, the dust over Zaratha began to settle. The once bustling Greylac command city was now quiet, broken buildings casting long shadows across empty streets. From orbit, the Terran fleet held position above the planet. No new attacks came from the ground, and no reinforcements had arrived. Captain Elena Brooks stood on the bridge of the Eagle's Reach, watching the planet below. Her face was tired but steady. She had seen too much war, but she still believed in their mission. "We have crippled their war power," she said quietly. "But the hardest part is still ahead, in the war room." Lieutenant Adam Crane studied the data coming from ground teams. "The Grellic military is fractured," he explained. "Some units want to surrender, but others are still fighting. Civilian support is weakening, and many are asking for peace." Commander Lila Grant nodded. "Our broadcasts are reaching the population," she said. "They see we do not target civilians, and that has made a difference." Back on the Laruvan, Commander Groltan and his officers watched the unfolding events. The alien crew was silent, processing what they saw. A young observer whispered, "The humans show mercy." Groltan replied, "Mercy is part of their strength." Suddenly, a message came through from the Grellic high speaker. He requested a meeting with the Terran Fleet Command. Captain Brooks agreed and prepared a secure channel. When the Grellic leader appeared on the screen, his face was grim and tired. "We seek terms of peace," he said. "Your attack has shown us the cost of war." Elena listened carefully. "We offer surrender terms," she replied. "Disarm your military forces, cease all attacks, and allow humanitarian aid. The alternative is continued destruction." The Grellic leader agreed to the terms. A ceasefire was declared, and soldiers on both sides began to stand down. Human medics and aid workers prepared to land on the planet to help those in need. But even as peace seemed near, Captain Brooks knew the dangers were not over. Old wounds and anger ran deep. There were factions within the Grellic who refused to surrender. They planned to fight on in secret. Lieutenant Crane warned, "We must remain alert, Captain. Our forces are spread thin, and guerrilla attacks could begin at any time." Elena nodded. "We will hold our ground." But we must also reach out to those who want peace. In the quiet moments before the final battle ended, Elena sent a message to Earth. Today, we fight not just for survival, but for the chance to build a better future. We will show the galaxy what it means to be human. The stars shone above, silent witnesses to the war and the hope that followed. And somewhere, far from the battlefield, the aliens on the Laruvan recorded it all. They saw humans not only as warriors but as a force of change, merciless in battle, merciful in victory. The galaxy would never be the same again. The stars stretched endlessly above the Terran fleet as it prepared to leave the Grillax system. Captain Elena Brooks stood on the bridge of the Eagle's Reach, her eyes scanning the calm blue planet below. Though the battle had ended, the weight of responsibility remained heavy on her shoulders. She knew peace was fragile, and that the galaxy was watching every move humanity made. In the command room, Lieutenant Adam Crane reviewed final reports from ground and space. All enemy military assets are neutralized. He said, no signs of resistance remain. Civilian aid teams are landing now, securing safe zones and rebuilding infrastructure. Captain Brooks nodded. We fought to protect, not to conquer, she said. This is a new path for humanity. A signal tone interrupted her thoughts, an incoming transmission from Earth. She opened the channel and heard the voice of the Terran High Council. Captain Brooks, your leadership has made history. The message said, the galaxy will know humanity's strength and honor. Elena replied simply, we fight with justice and mercy. We will not stop until peace lasts. Before the fleet prepared for its jump to hyperspace, Elena recorded a message for all who could hear it across the stars. This is Captain Elena Brooks of the Terran Unified Fleet, she began. We do not seek war, but we will not tolerate injustice or threats to our people. Our actions are clear. We fight to protect the innocent and to stop those who would spread fear. Let this be a warning and a promise, she said, her voice steady. Humanity will stand strong, united, and ready to defend peace wherever it is threatened. Across the galaxy, that message echoed. Alien ships, diplomats and leaders listened carefully, some in fear, others in respect, because humans were no longer unknown. They were a force to be reckoned with. Back on the observation vessel Laruvan, Commander Grolton watched the transmission. His 4 eyes reflected the light of Elena's words. They are not just fighters, he said slowly. They are a storm of iron and fire, tempered by honor. He turned to his officers. Prepare our report for the coalition, he said. Humanity has changed the balance of power as the Eagle's Reach and its fleet slipped into hyperspace. The stars seemed to watch silently. A new chapter in the galaxy had begun, one where humans were both feared and admired. And though the battle was over, the story was far from done. For in the darkness between stars, new challenges awaited. But one truth remained clear to all who had seen humanity at war. They fought not just with weapons, but with heart, with discipline, and with an unbreakable will. And that was a message no one could ignore.